At Accenture, we have huge public aspirations about our diversity and inclusion. So we've made public promises around hitting 50-50 by 2020. The whole thought behind that is, as a company that really is all about the power of our people, through that diversity of viewpoint, of background, we can create the best products and services for our clients. One of the pieces that has really delivered for us across the years has been International Women's Day, and that started out as just a kind of speaking event for us from a client perspective, and has evolved over the years. The idea of it was to spark conversation, look at how we can talk about female diversity, and then diversity in general in a more empowered way. And a lot of that has been around us bringing together speakers who aren't necessarily from our organization, but can talk to their journey and what they have achieved as part of their lives. We wanted to be able to look at that long tail process and think about how we could redistribute pieces, how we could try and target out to our candidates further from the event as we went forwards. And we landed on the idea of storytelling. So one of our big pieces and growth areas at the moment is working with the National Theatre as part of our sponsorships process and their storytelling department on how can we tell engrossing stories that really engage our audience. And when we were looking at that content development process, we wanted to start to look at the intersections of different content pieces. It's really great to have specific stories that speak to a particular candidate or a particular audience, but it means that the usage of that is relatively limited. So what we did was we then looked at our skill targets and then also our diversity targets and started to marry those two together to find stories that we thought not only could speak to that particular skill target, but also our audiences in general on a longer term basis as well. One of the things that I think it's quite easy to do when a company is creating content is that feeling that you are creating content which is only specifically about you. And it's very difficult to engage with sometimes. If we're always talking about ourselves, then it shows little of our care, our thought about people, and also makes us feel so kind of untrustworthy in our own opinions. If we only have the echo chamber of our own company, how can we be seen as kind of knowledge holders and people who are looking at what that future trajectory is? So with that in mind, what we did was look to create this piece called Trailblazers. So it contained 5 core stories, which were a mixture of our own people talking about pieces that they'd done that we saw as trailblazing, but also people external to our organization around the world that we thought had also made a difference, particularly around the technology skill targets that we were looking at. And from that, we created a physical printed booklet in a kind of magazine style that was then distributed as part of our International Women's Day event. So both our internal people, our key clients, and some of our candidates who were invited through to that event. That resource is also now a leverageable piece which, while it's connected to International Women's Day, none of the asset directly speaks to that when it was first distributed. So now it's an ongoing asset that we take to events, both recruitment and internal events, going forwards, so that we're continuing that conversation and looking to get the greatest level of ROI out of the asset. But again, the kind of physicality of that brochure has the limitations to it. If we're not physically in front of people, then how can they read it? So what we've also done is kind of go through a process where we've revamped some of the functionality of our website. To say, you know, our website is a large global production. You know, while we try to build in it, it's relatively slow at getting some pieces done for it. But what we've managed to do is take what used to just be a blog series, which sat, if you directly had the link to go through to it and find those stories, we've managed to invent on top of that. So now this blog allows us to seed stories throughout our website. And that seeding of stories allows us to not just send through the latest stories that are up there, but also we can filter down to a particular topic. So if you're on a page for Salesforce, then we can pull in directly the Salesforce stories that are appropriate. If you're on a page where we're talking about female diversity, then we can also pull through the specific stories that speak to that as well. So make sure that we're showing the content, that it's timely, and we're getting as specific as we can possibly be with our stories in front of the candidates who are coming through to our website. But again, both of those things rely on people already having started to engage with Accenture, whether that's them coming to one of our events, talking to a recruiter, or coming through to our website. So the other piece that we've been working on is then going through, this is a tool called MyUKI. It's an internal tool which is similar to LinkedIn Elevate. So LinkedIn Elevate, a really great and useful tool for making sure that we're utilizing our own people's niche networks in order to get content out and into the right hands. But in our organization, and I expect the majority of organizations, it's certainly a certain level of seniority up who have access to that tool. This tool we've developed in a very similar fashion, but now is available to all of our people. So when we're then going through looking at a particular skill set type that's come up, a release demand, and we can provide that through to our people to help with that dissemination of stories and information into their niche networks, which is the most important place we can possibly be. With this work, so all of the work that we did was organic. We didn't put any paid media behind these pieces, but the results on those have been great so far. And the nice part about it is because we're not seeing this in isolation, that this content isn't just something which was just for International Women's Day and then done, we also are then looking at those numbers tick up over the months as we go along. With that, we took the core stories, those 5 core stories, and then also broke them down into sub-stories underneath that. So shortened versions of each story, pieces that then spotlighted on the particular skill, some that then were our own people providing the commentary back on those stories as well. So it's allowed us to then create a full series of social media updates and content that could be released out alongside this. Particularly of interest has been what that's looked like when we've then put that through our own network, and that LinkedIn Elevate piece, that reach and the click-throughs from that has been really, for us, very impressive, particularly in the niche skill set markets that we're looking at. We've already influenced over 2,000 applications from it all being released back at the beginning of March. The other piece that we've gone through is then looking at using promoted content. So with this, putting those content and those stories into what we would call tier 1 media, so Reuters, the Evening Standard, Independent on their website, as those recommended stories once you've finished reading the article you're on. And from that, and that media spend was only an £800 media spend to get over 5,000 click-throughs to our articles and content.